Welcome to The Prisoner's Dilemma, the show where we watch and talk about the 1960s TV show The Prisoner. I'm Brendan, and with me is the host of my dreams, Matthew.
This is me. I'm like the Sandman over here, Matthew Gosdile. Pleased to be here.
You're 9 feet tall,
It's true.
white as a ghost,
Mm-hmm.
kind of look like Robert Smith from A Cure,
Yep, true.
got a hot sister.
I don't know if I feel comfortable you talking about my sister that way.
She's got a ankh for a necklace.
It's true, she does.
Yeah, I think she's flirting with me, but actually, I'm dead, and she's taken me to the great beyond.
Wow.
Do you,
That's the end of the, so you're dead, so that's the end of the podcast, I guess. Why do we end the podcast in every episode?
That's what Patrick McGowan would have wanted.
Oh, that's true.
What did we watch this week?
We watched A, B, and C.
Now, I said last week,
Yes.
if I could show someone one episode,
Yes.
I'd probably show them Chimes of Big Ben.
Right.
After watching this one,
Mm.
I might show them this one.
It's really good.
It's so good.
Brendan, if you like this, you'll love Danger Man. This is so Danger Man. It's crazy.
So here's the thing. The idea of the concept is pretty high level, right? This idea of like, there's already this plot in motion of you're stuck in this one place and we need to do these things. Although, I mean, you don't even really need to know what the village is or how and why everyone behaves the way that they do in the village to get this episode, right?
Sure. We might want to just get into the summary, maybe, but
I want to talk obliquely about the episode as much as possible without saying.
I see. For the people who haven't watched, they can just sort of try to piece together the plot from our oblique references. I get it. So it is interesting, right? Because like this is our first explicitly out of narrative order episode.
Yes, that is true.
We will later see the number 2 from this episode later in the series, but earlier in the timeline.
Yeah, and you can pretty clearly see that this is the case, even if you're trying to make the order make sense in your head.
Sure.
For one, there's a pretty obvious exit point for this number 2 at the end of the episode, which would make it much more peculiar that he comes back later on.
Yeah, and he's so much more confident in that first one, or in that second appearance, right?
And what's more, this is the only opening where number 2 does not say, the new number 2 as part of the intro. He simply says, I am number 2.
Right. I have no idea. I don't know if you have like extra production information this time, but it really strikes me that like the general, which is the other one with this number 2, who's Colin Gordon, by the way, we should just say his name. He's a great comedy actor and also a great drama actor. He was like in West End, but he was also in Pink Panther, right? And I think you can see both modes in his performances here. In my head, at least, the way I make sense of it is that the general, which is the other episode with him, was probably intended to be in this slot, but that they liked A, B, and C so much more than the general that they just swapped them.
I can easily see that. I was talking with some folks earlier today about the 6 different viewing orders that are available. I don't know if we've explicitly said what they are. Here, why don't we just... Okay, here are the 6 different ways that you could watch The Prisoner if you were so inclined. There's the studio production order.
Yeah.
Now, we should say, back then, people didn't make TV in the order that it was supposed to come out.
Right.
People still don't necessarily. Right. And so studio production order, the order in which things are created, is not necessarily the intended viewing order.
In fact, it is explicitly not in many cases because of things like before we had big, weird cubes that people filmed all TV in, you had to like account for like changing of the seasons, for example.
Right. Making video games, a lot of times I will try and wait to make the first level much later in the process because then I have an idea of what I'm doing. And so I could make the first thing the player sees a lot more coherent than it might otherwise be.
And you know, like, what you need them to know for later.
Exactly. I can set up like, hey, here's a piece of information that you're going to want to keep in your head.
Right.
There's the official what's called the ITC sequence. ITC is the production company. This is the
Yep.
sequence that we're watching them in. It's the original broadcast order as they would have been seen in the UK.
Yep.
Virtually every DVD, Blu-ray release, all of the streaming releases have them in this order.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're watching along on YouTube, they're probably in that order as well. This is all, by the way, on List of the Prisoner episodes on wikipedia.org. There's the US order, which is virtually identical to the UK broadcast order. It skipped one episode, which obviously changed the sequence a little bit. But then that episode was reincorporated for all re-airings, so shouldn't even be here as far as I'm concerned. There is a United States A&E channel release of the DVDs that has its own order that I don't know where this order came from. It's not production order. It's not related to production order. It's just, I bet someone there thought, I'm the one that can really do this.
I'm the prisoner expert. I've figured it out.
Well, there's another release from a ITC booklet that listed all of the episodes with synopses, which is on the 2009 Blu-ray set as a PDF.
Oh.
In a document called Story Information.
Huh.
Which I guess is this is called the warehouse order.
Yeah, I've heard of
So
that.
it's like a proposed order, and it looks like it was once used on Channel 4 in the early 80s.
Right.
And then, finally, in San Jose, California, there's a local PBS member station called KTEH, where a man named Scott Appel arranged them in his own little order.
Shoutouts.
From D. Scott Appel's own Wikipedia page. This is what people love on podcasts, when people just open up
when you
Wikipedia
read Wikipedia.
page.
Yeah, it's popular on YouTube, too.
Appel compiled a new order of the progression for the series episodes based on extensive analysis, one which is considered by many, citation needed, to be definitive.
You know how you're not allowed to write your own Wikipedia article? Wonder what happened there. At the end of this, when we get to 17, we should do our own order.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Should we jump into summary, or is there more things you want to talk about ahead of time?
If you're finally done taking us down these side roads and tangents, I would love it if you'd finally get around to telling me what happens in A, B, and C.
All right. So, A, B, and C centers on a new, to us, watching in release order, as we just covered in great detail. Number 2, a nervous man constantly afraid of receiving a call from his superior on an incredible red phone, and a sort of strange scientist lady known as number 14. The episode begins with number 2 pressuring 14 to conduct an experiment she does not feel is ready. The experiment turns out to be Inception, from the movie Inception. Number 14 has a drug to control someone's dreams, and a machine to project these dreams on a screen. Number 2 is convinced number 6 was planning to sell out and has 3 candidates, A, B, and C, who he wants to include in number 6's dreams to see how he responds. Each dream meeting occurs at a party hosted by a Madame Engadine in Paris. A turns out to be a former ally of number 6 who defected. B turns out to be a close friend and freelance spy. And C is a mystery, even to number 2. Over 3 nights, the duo of 2 and 14 get 6 to dream this party and meet each figure in turn. But our intrepid hero catches on to their plans, mostly because 14 is for some reason leading a double life in the village. By the end of the episode, he's fully taken control of the experiment and his dream, and uses it to turn the tables on number 2. The episode ends before our normal outro, with number 2 staring in fear at his incredible red phone.
It's very good.
It's a great app.
A couple of things stand out from this right away. One is that across the board, incredible performances.
Oh, for sure.
Everyone is really like firing on all cylinders in this one. I have no complaints about any of the way that any of this is rendered. Everyone that is acting their head off. It is
True.
terrific. Second, it's brilliantly paced. I think
True.
so much of what this episode is doing in terms of giving you a premise and then executing on that premise has none of the drag and lull that we have seen trip up the past couple of episodes, right? Like the past couple of episodes have had like some really, really strong through lines. And then when they need to like introduce some new information or even show a sequence where a lot of things are happening, it can get really slow and kind of muddled a little bit. This has really snappy pacing. It has really, really good dynamic camera work. And it trusts you to follow along without having to show you every single thing that happens in order, right?
Totally. And I think we can thank the sort of production team a lot for that.
Totally.
So we have Anthony Skeen. This is the first of his 3 episodes that we're going to watch. He mostly wrote police procedurals, and he didn't really write much after this, which is interesting. His other 2, for the curious, are Many Happy Returns and Dance of the Dead, which are both really strong episodes in my mind, though Many Happy Returns is controversial, to say the least. There's also the director, Pat Jackson. This is the first of his 4 that we're seeing, though as we gestured at earlier, this was actually the 11th filmed. But Pat Jackson was actually a major Danger Man director, and in some reports is responsible for even getting McGowan the job as Drake on Danger Man. So really strong production team on this one, and I think it shows in the episode.
Yeah, so David Tomlin also had a really strong hand in this, in part because, as you mentioned, this was produced a little bit later in the sequence. And something that they had discovered as they were making a bunch of The Prisoner was that it cost a lot of money to make The Prisoner. And so when Anthony Skeen came aboard to write this episode, Tomlin gave him a really specific instruction, which was, look, we need to use some library footage.
Sure, yeah.
And what that means basically is they needed to do less location shooting. They needed to use stuff that was in the archives. They needed to be able to do stuff in front of green screens. They needed to do stuff that was restricted to a smaller number of sets.
Sure.
Which sort of led to Skeen creating this sequence where we're not very many places within the village. Not a lot of action is happening in the village. And we are reusing one particular set. This sort of
science.
We're reusing 3 locations in particular, right? We're reusing this science lab, which is number 2's chamber, sort of redone as this doctor's office with dream inception equipment attached. We're using this sort of party chateau, which is on the MGM lot.
Interesting. Okay.
And we're also using this weird Bloodborne castle on the MGM lot. That location was reused, was used for a bunch of different things. Perhaps most notably was used in The Dirty Dozen with Charles Bronson and whatnot.
Cool.
Yeah, but so there's a very, very specific emphasis of like, let's try and do a lot with a little.
Totally.
And this is what Skeen came up with. And Skeen apparently liked it enough that he wound up reusing the same concept for a later show called Counter-Strike, where he basically repeated the entire plot over again.
Fair. I mean, it's really good. The whole thing basically turns into like a 2-person show for a bunch of it, with just like 2 and 14 bouncing off each other. They're almost doing like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 or second time referencing that, right?
Yeah.
As they're like just commenting over this film they're watching, basically.
This is, we've seen some of the sci-fi high-tech kind of stuff that the village has available to it, but this is the first time that we're really seeing them like dip into them using experimental technology in order to get what they want out of number 6.
Yeah. And I think this is a good way to just like get into our usual going through the episode. Because we actually start this episode on number 2.
Right.
And not number 2 watching number 6, right? This is on number 2 himself as he's sort of like anxiously waiting a call. He gets the call that's on this, like, again, incredible giant red phone. It's like the phones that we've seen before, the sort of weird curvy L, but even bigger. It's in our podcast art.
It is. It is so big that after he's done having this scary call with it, he's able to lean against it for support.
It's so good.
Yeah. Tell me about this phone call that he has.
Well, what's interesting is, unlike other phone calls in the series, we don't hear the person on the other end of the line.
Not even like a little mumble or anything like that.
Yeah. We don't get any Charlie Brown adult. Instead, it's just number 2 as he reacts to what is clearly he's being sort of admonished, right?
Right.
And those of us who know the future will know that he's already sort of failed once with the general, which we'll watch later.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, you get this real sense like he's on the, the chopping block. He is inches away from being taken out if he cannot get some scheme to work on number 6.
Now, is he talking to number 1?
Great question.
That seems like the obvious conclusion, but he never actually says number 1.
No.
He does say, yes, sir.
Yep.
I despite Magoo's show being what it is, I wouldn't put it past them to have a lady number 1 who gets called sir anyway.
Well, we will have lady number 2. So like,
right.
This is a thing.
And number 1 could, for all we know, be a rotating position, right? Maybe there are multiple number 1s.
And we did get in the very last episode with like Nadia's end bit, some gestural thing of like reports going to someone above number 2. So it's unclear how many people are above number 2.
Right. Regardless, whoever's there has number 2 frazzled.
Totally.
We meet this person in a state of anxiety, in a state of fear, which is, an interesting place for us to discover the overseer of the village, right? Because
totally.
All 3 of our previous number 2s have had a relative level of confidence coming into the scene, right?
Totally. And this is also what I sort of was gesturing at earlier, but of this being the first episode that has number 2 as a perspective character, right?
Right.
We really get into this guy's head in a way that even in our last episode with Leo McKern, and we got like a lot of his thoughts, right? Like we don't really get him being vulnerable with us, right?
Totally.
But the show even sort of wants you to root for him a little bit, or like be concerned for him a little bit.
Yeah, I think even if, we're ultimately on number 6's side, I think they do a good job of making this number 2 out to be as much a victim of the machinations of the village as the other prisoners that are here.
Totally. And one of the ways that they communicate his character quickly is his incessant love of milk.
This guy is a big, big milk boy.
Oh, no. I don't like that.
He loves his milk.
He does love his milk, is the thing. He immediately, chugs a glass of milk right after this phone call to settle his stomach, I guess. There's some theorizing he might have an ulcer among sort of fan communities.
There's evidently a cut scene where he's literally surrounded by empty milk bottles.
That rules! Oh, man, I wish that would have been in there.
Did you ever take that quiz?
Which quiz? What? The milk bottle quiz?
Do you roll with milk every day, all day? Are you a Milkmaster Supreme?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Take this quiz and find out if milk is your ilk.
This sounds like an extreme teen Bible, but for milk.
Question 1. Is milk straight up the goodness? 1. Yes, milk is the madness we call the goodness. 2. No, milk is the 10-foot badness. 3. Yes, milk is on the front page of tomorrow's newspaper every day in my town.
I've changed my mind. This is a clickhole artitle.
Yeah, this is clickhole.
There we go. I got there. That's really good.
Oh no, number 1's gonna have me killed.
Yeah, it's true. I can either confirm or deny. I'm not number 1.
Yeah.
Shiftily looking at the camera.
When we finally get number 6 on screen, he's getting wheeled in the middle of a thunderstorm, unconscious.
Yeah, it's incredible. We get this quick thing just to get us there, right? Like, We get a quick him calling on a different phone, which is so funny, by the way. The idea that
Mhm.
you would have like, he has 4 different phones in his office. They're all different colors. And he calls this one to get to number 14. He says, okay, you're moving up the experiment, even though she hasn't finished with animal experiments. She hasn't done any human experiments. And yes, the next thing we get is like a Frankenstein's castle opening. It rules.
It's very good. Yeah, she's basically a mad scientist in her lab,
Yep.
working late one night.
Uh-huh. When her eyes
And
perceived an
uh-huh.
eerie sight.
So to set up the lab, basically, there's room for McGowan's not bed, but what do we call
Gurney.
that? Yeah. So there's a gurney that they wheel McGowan in on.
Yep.
They attach diodes to his head. These connect to a set of strange sci-fi computers
Yep.
that she says send electrical signals, which can then be turned into visuals, which then get projected onto a big screen.
Right.
We don't know where the sound comes from, but the sound is definitely there also.
Yeah.
And the basics of it is that we can see into number 6's dreams as they're happening, but also that with an adjacent machine that has tapes,
Right.
that has a sort of like a reel-to-reel player.
Yes.
You can add a tape and influence the contents of the dreams by feeding in images.
Right. Before we get too much further, you should say number 14's actress is Sheila Allen. She was a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Like, no wonder you were like, yeah, the acting is better in this episode.
That's good.
And she was a British TV actress. She'd previously been on Danger Man as an enemy spy. She's really strong in this episode, I think.
Yeah, very, very good.
Hey, Brendan, what's number 6 dreaming about when they hook him up?
Whenever I dream, I, of course, dream about myself, observing myself from outside of my body.
Yep.
Watching the intro sequence to the TV show About Me.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally just playing the opening sequence where he's
resigning angrily.
Resigning, yeah.
On a loop.
It's very good, actually. It's really, really good use of imagery.
Yeah. And she calls it, number 14 calls it an anguish pattern, as if it's a thing she's seen before.
Oh.
Which is really interesting. And so I think we are supposed to take from this that at least their interpretation of it is that number 6 is agonizing over his decision to resign. Like, thinking about it. He's focused on it. They also say that he's not normal. He's not standard. It's an interesting little character choice.
So, clarifying thing about the hospital setup, very important that I left out, which is that he has to be injected with a particular drug.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
In order to produce the kind of signals that the computer can turn into images, I guess.
I think it's the other way. I think it's because even, as we'll learn by the end of the episode, when he doesn't have much of the drug in him, right? They still get that.
Yes.
It's about their ability to influence the dream, right?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. It makes him susceptible to suggestion.
Right. This is, the architect drug from Inception, where they can get into the dream, but then they have architects control the dream. Ooh.
Now, she said she's only done animal experiments up to this point.
Right.
She looking at animal dreams?
I guess so.
What do you think? She got like a dog in there?
We don't see any animals.
Watch the dog get dog resign over and over again.
Yeah. That's what. Oh, yeah. Interesting. They actually have a whole other dog village where it's dog spies, and there's a dog number 2 and a dog number 6. It's basically the busy town of Richard Scarry, but deeply insidious.
Well,
so then we're getting into them actually trying to influence his dream, which is the big moment, right? They don't actually know if it's going to work in the narrative.
So number 2 believes that the resignation had to have been to sell out.
Right.
He doesn't give a whole lot of information why he believes this to be the case.
Right.
But it's an interesting stance to take, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, logically, if he left very suddenly,
right,
then he must have something that he's trying to sell to the highest bidder.
Sure.
In order to make his fortune, and then get away.
I think that it is, in absence of the rest of the show, perfectly logical. I think anybody who
Absolutely.
looked at number 6 for 3 seconds would say that's not the reason.
No, but as you said, thinking about this as any episode of Danger Man,
Right.
I think the idea that here's this spy and he's in this world of spies
Right.
in the Cold War
Yep.
could pick up with that and go, yeah, okay, I understand that's a supposition that any logical person could make.
Sure. I think that in this case, it tells us more about this number 2's character than number 6.
Sure.
I also think that this number 2, I mean, I think this whole thing is kind of a tragedy for this number 2, if like from his perspective. Sure. I mean, he's not a good guy, by the way. He like threatens number 14's life. Like, we should not feel sympathetic to this man.
Sure.
But it is sort of a Greek tragedy in terms of, I think he's wrong from the start. And I also think that he misunderstands what his superiors want. I think that our last 3 number 2s had a much clearer sense of like the getting at why he resigned is sort of a formality, right? There's this line earlier about if we get that answer, the rest will follow. Because what they really want is they want number 6 on their side.
Yes.
But I think that this number 2, in his sort of desperation to like please his dark masters, whoever they might be, is completely bungling things like from the jump. This was never going to lead to the outcome that like the people who run the village actually want.
Totally. And I think that goes to what you said in the very first episode of our show, which is we're going to see a lot of different number 2s with a lot of different priorities, right?
Totally.
Like this is someone who, depending on whether or not you want to count the later episode as canonically happening before this or not.
Sure.
This is someone who has a lot of anxiety and a lot of sort of brutal desperation. And so is desperately hanging his hopes on, okay, if I do X, I will get Y. And that will allow me to live another day.
Totally. Yeah, so they get the film. They said, okay, we're going to use Madame Ongadine's parties because that's where all 3 of these A, B, and C people that number 2 thinks number 6 might have sold out to or been wanting to sell out to, rather.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, right. He has basically made the calculation that if the village had not gotten number 6 already,
yes,
then he would have gone to this party and all 3 of these people would have been there.
And so his thinking is if we introduce them one at a time, number 6 will choose to sell out to one of them, and that will give me the answer. Right.
Right.
Madame Ongadine's parties, by the way, they're going to inject that into the dream by showing just some like B-roll of the party, basically.
Yeah, it's fun that they just have this, I guess. I mean, it suggests that they went out of their way to, well, it suggests a couple of things, right? One, she is known for throwing these kinds of parties that have these kinds of people attending, right? And so this makes sense where in the Cold War world of spycraft, that this would be a valuable place to have stock footage of, or just surveillance of, right? And so it makes sense that the people of the village would be interested in her and her parties. More on that later.
It is interesting just to call it out, some differences between the script and the actual episode. In the episode, he just says it's some film of the most recent party, not really specific about how they got it, right? And in the script, he says that it's newsreel of the most recent party, as if like her parties are so big that they become, international news that people like want to see.
Sure, why not?
This is fun.
Before we get too far into the dream, there's a very good bit as they're putting him under for the very first time where he opens his eyes, and so his dream camera becomes
the actual from his perspective shot.
Yeah, so you can see number 14 as if she is part of the dream.
Yeah, it's very
before
good.
She closes his eyes again.
Yeah, that's an important thing to note for later.
Yeah, even apart from that, it's just excellent camera work.
Yeah. And it does a nice bit of like sort of storytelling just through this little moment, right? About like how this works and how it might be like hackable.
Mm-hmm.
So the party. They play the film, and by God, it works. Number 14 has a little smile, and she's like glancing at number 2. It's just this little moment, which I thought was like just a nice character beat in there. Like she's excited. She's a scientist. It works. This is exciting for everybody. And then we get number 6, right? Entering the party.
He's having a good time.
He's having a good time. This is the most relaxed we've ever seen him.
He's, he's saying hi to a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
He's happy to be here. As far as he's concerned, he's just started his vacation.
Yeah. The village was nothing but a nightmare.
If even that, right?
Yeah.
Like, does he even have a conception of the village at this point? Is
We'll
like,
we'll get to it.
yeah.
Anyway, the next thing we get though is Madame Engadine.
She's very good.
She is so good. This is Catherine Cath. She was previously a prima ballerina. She was a can-can dancer in Moulin Rouge. She was in a bunch of international productions and films and TV. And she sells being like the socialite so well.
Everyone is doing a great job acting here, but she
Mm-hmm.
really ties everything together in
Oh,
a
for
way
sure.
that is really, really like whenever he re-enters the dream, she's always
Yes.
there to like welcome him to the party.
Yes.
And she is just a great, great foil for him.
Oh, yes.
In this mode, right? Always
Mm-hmm.
teasing, always trying to get a little bit more out of him. Always happy to see him, but understanding of the game that he's playing.
Yeah. I think that he's like more flirty with her than like any other woman we have
Oh, without a
previously
doubt.
seen.
Yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
rules. Also, there's a great line. Oh, go ahead.
No, please. I think you're about to say the exact same thing I was about to say.
She has a great line here where she says, "Be horrible to other women," and he says, "I promise." And I wrote down, so that's why.
Finally, we've cracked the code.
We've cracked it. We figured it all out. This is why number 6 is the way he is.
Yeah, he's got to do it for Madame Engadine.
Yeah, he's basically like a
Engadine?
Engadine. He's basically a chivalric knight for her, and so her wish is his command.
He tells her he's going on holiday, and she replies, "The English holiday, big boots and fishing sticks." But then he doesn't clarify. He says he is being coy with her,
Oh yes,
as he is with number 2s previously, where he's not really given out a whole lot of information, even here.
but you get a sense here at least that like the coyness is like genuine friendliness rather than like with the number 2s of like I'm playing the social game.
Yeah, maybe he's just this way. Maybe that's just the way that he is.
Maybe though, the end reveal of Madame Engadine will put that into question a little.
Sure.
Bit.
But that's getting. But that would be telling. Let's talk about A.
Let's talk about A. So we get these 3 briefcases. It's very funny that they have, sorry, not briefcases, like 3 folders that number 2 has prepared. It's labeled nicely, ABC.
Go to Office Depot. Get the biggest box folder
Angelo.
you
can. Angelo, I need you to go to Office Depot, Angelo.
Work units are no object.
But each one just has a photo and then like some sort of newsreel or something that they're gonna like hook in to like inject them into the dream in the same way.
It's good.
It's very funny. There's a little bit of a back and forth between number 2 and number 14 here, introducing who letter A. It's very important that it's letters, not numbers.
Oh, I wonder if that's why it's
is.
A, B, and C and not 1, 2, 3.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah.
And because of some wordplay later. But A was a spy on the same side as number 6, this is confirmed a little bit later, who defected, quote, about 6 years ago.
Yeah, number 14 says that he was in the news for having done so.
Yes. And we know that like he still goes to these parties though, which is really interesting.
Yeah. That's just this is like neutral ground, I guess, right?
Basically, that's the vibe we're getting from these parties. That's why so many people from so many sides can be there.
Sure.
So it works again. They inject the little film reel. A finds 6. He's in conversation with someone else. We don't really hear that conversation. He sort of pulls him away. And they have this little back and forth, right?
This whole exchange is really delightful. This is like...
It's very good.
If this is what Danger Man is built out of, I can see why it was so big for so long.
Yes. This is an extremely Danger Man exchange.
Yeah. Very, very like... it's like a duel, right? It's like they're fencing with one another, back and forth, very, very gently prodding, poking at one another, trying to Perry and Ripazette would
Got
Ripazette,
it.
Um,
I
uh,
love what a represent.
yeah. They start. They seem to be like out whispering one another by the end of it.
Oh yes.
They're both trying to have the last word. And they're sort of
I hope you're happy in your new life.
New life?
Well, news of old friends travels quickly.
In a few hours.
To you and to me, news is like air. You breathe it deeply. We draw it from far and wide.
If it's interesting.
What are you going to do with your freedom?
Go fishing.
Perhaps you're fishing now. What's your price?
What am I selling?
I'm anxious to find out.
Madame's wine.
Yeah, and the thing that A is angling at is that A is explicitly assumed the same thing, at least, right? The important thing to remember here is this is number 6 projection of A, right? And what this projection of A has assumed is the same thing that number 2 assumed, that number 6 resigned because he planned to sell out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already heard about it. He says, news moves fast for old friends. And he basically is, a little cagey at first, but he wants to know how much number 6 wants. And number 6 does not.
Tell me about this actor.
Yeah. So A's actor, scrolling up to my notes. A's actor is Peter Bowles. He was a screen and stage actor. He appeared with Leo McKern in Rumpel of the Bailey, which was an extremely popular sitcom where Leo McKern was a judge basically. And yeah, he's been in a whole bunch of different things. I think again, we really seeing the stage actor chops in this episode.
Was on Danger Man, evidently became really good friends with McGowan on Danger Man.
That makes sense.
McGowan was really happy to have him back for this.
Mm-hmm.
And get a little bit of reporting from Bowles talking about McGowan fighting with Pat Jackson over the direction of the episode, if you're
that's interesting.
Yeah, so here again, we brought up before McGowan's tendency to have a really controlling vision of how things are going to be done and how things need to be set up. And in particular, we haven't had quite the flare-ups just yet, but we start getting a sense of them here in that we get some really aggressive conversations.
Right.
Bowles quotes McGowan saying to Jackson so he's talking specifically about this scene where McGowan and Bowles are sort of bantering
Jousting,
back and forth. Yeah. And it was written differently. It was supposed to be directed differently, and he came up with a different approach with Bowles. I think it might have to do with where they are in the scene. They pretty much stay stationary rather than having them moving through a particular space.
Sure.
That's just conjecture. But regardless, Bowles quotes McGowan as saying, to Jackson, that is not how it is going to be shot. I'm not just the star, I'm the producer. And to do it that way costs money.
Wow.
So again, that stuff that Tomlin was talking about that led Skeen to write the script in the way that he did.
Right.
McGowan might have also been feeling the pinch from ITC here, and was determined to get things done, not merely because it was his vision, but because he knew a way to do it right.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So, more of that in the episodes to come.
Oh, for sure. It's constant because McGowan is constant. I don't think we need a bunch more on this interchange. Sure. But I think what the really interesting thing we can pull out here is that we won't get any names in this episode for either number 6. Nobody at the party will call him by any name. And we won't get any names for A or B either.
That's right.
And that's really interesting when you think about this as being number 6's dream, right? His subconscious, right?
Sure.
That he does not name himself in his subconscious. But more on that later.
Do you think this is a joke?
Okay. I'm preparing myself for a joke.
Yeah, get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he thinks of himself as number 6?
I was going to wait until the end of the episode for that, because there's a specific line when we get to the C dream that I really want to hammer that point in. But I think
let's talk about it. Let's wait then.
Yeah, let's wait for it. Let's wait for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this exchange ends with Number 6 leaving. He goes to grab his coat. Like, he's fully out of the party now.
He's ready to go home. We didn't say when Anjanine first showed up that the doors were opened by
Parisian
valets in like what is basically like musketeer uniforms.
Yeah.
It's like with wigs and everything.
Yeah, powdered wigs.
It's amazing.
It's really good.
And they appear now, apprehending number 6.
Yes, because it turns out that A somehow, again, dream logic, right? Got around number 6, beat him to the door, such that when the door opens, he's waiting there.
Yeah, it's very, very like the video game just needs this person to be over here.
Yeah.
And so it has teleported them into position.
But you could imagine the very funny shot of just watch as A like throws his glass down and books it outside.
I mean, there's a lot about this episode that is very video gamey.
Sure.
Not least of which the fact that you get to do it over and over again to try and get it right.
Yeah. Somebody make this roguelike.
Yeah. I mean, this is a Hitman level, right?
It is just a Hitman level. It's true. I think that there's a really good line here. Speaking of good lines, when the door opens and we see A there, number 6 says, "You never could take a hint." And A says, "I don't want a hint. I want you."
Yeah, that's good.
It's really good. Also, it's deeply homoerotic.
Yeah, well, all spycraft is.
It's true.
Yeah. This is the only reason we have spies.
Oh, finally an excuse for men to touch each other.
Yeah. In 1940.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they decided, you know what? To win the war.
Uh-huh.
We've got to weaponize all these queer people.
Yeah. We have them just like hanging out in the Navy right now. Let's get them out of that. Let's put them in some suits. Anyway, so after this, there's not really a lot more to say about this first dream. At least I don't have much to say. There's sort of a bad action sequence.
So they put him in a car.
Uh-huh.
They drive him to an empty lot and threaten his life. Someone pulls a gun on him.
Sort of threaten his life, right?
Yeah.
They pull a gun on him, but then he reminds them, you can't kill me. Because he's got the information. So it's great. The actor here, by the way, A's henchman is Bill Cummings, who was in the Pink Panther Strikes Again and the Avengers. But you can really see the like physical comedy acting in this scene as number 6 reminds him, you're really going to do that with the gun? You can't quite hear what the line is, or at least I couldn't. He like kind of shrugs like, yeah, okay, fair. And he like takes the gun around and turns it into like a club and is going to hit him with the handle.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
It's very, very good. That's basically where it wraps up.
Yeah. There's a short exchange here because like the dream has ended where number 2 says, no, let's do the next one immediately. And number 14 says, no, the drug is dangerous enough as it is. We need to give him at least 24 hours to rest. So it's going to be tomorrow night when they can do it again.
And that's it.
No, that's not it. We go.
Oh, that's right. That's where I stopped watching.
Oh, okay. Well, let me explain the next bit. So number 6 awakens clearly feeling really groggy. You get a sense that whatever this drug's after effects are, they're not like good. Mm-hmm. He's not, spry, not jumping up to put his, stereo in the fridge again.
No, he seems badly hungover.
Yes, true. And we can hear outside somebody talking, right? We hear somebody saying, I know everybody. I meet everybody. And he goes outside, opens his door, and we see him see this lady, this flower seller, selling flowers to number 14.
Right.
And in that moment, it all sort of clicks into place for him. He looks down at his wrist. He can see the injection spot on his wrist. He doesn't know entirely what's up, but he knows that some ploy by the village is happening.
Yeah, there's removed lines from the original script where he seems to remember having dreamed about a party of some sort.
Right.
And presumably remembers number 14 from the moment where he saw her as part of his pre-dream dream.
Right.
And so recognizes her, can't quite put it all together.
The flower girl is Lucille Song, who's a Chinese-American actress, and is Jenny Huang in Fresh Off the Boat. She is still alive and still working.
Hooray!
Yeah, I wanted to call that out because I had made a sort of off-color comment about everybody dying in the first episode, and so I wanted to make sure I noted that. Also, this is our second non-white actor or actress in the show. She originally had like another couple scenes. Those were cut. She doesn't have a number. She might have one that I just couldn't read on the pin. But yeah, she's here. Not really doing much, but a great actress given a bit part.
All right, here's a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Did number 14 stop by number 6's place deliberately?
It is a question of why on earth she bought those flowers.
Or if she was going to buy those flowers, why not wait for her to be anywhere that's not directly in front of number 6's place?
Yeah.
Because her behavior later suggests that she doesn't want to be seen or followed.
Right. I mean, I could imagine, right? We get a sense that number 14, one of her principal personality traits is that she's like a stereotypical scientist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine the curiosity of, will he notice, right?
Or even just what his condition is the next day.
Totally.
Like, this is, again, theoretically the first human that this drug has ever been used on.
Totally. And so, yeah, I could totally imagine that leading to her sort of like, just sort of hanging out near his place. And then she comes up with the excuse of, oh, I could buy some flowers. And then it just so happens that that's when he wakes up.
Exactly.
I could buy that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it works maybe a little too well because he ends up following her.
Yep. Finds her at the lounge near the old folks' home.
Mm-hmm. The place with the old boat that we've been at several times.
Well, I was about to ask, do you notice anything peculiar about this this version of it?
No. What did I miss?
Well, what do you see?
I'm not looking at it right now, but in my mind's eye, I see a series of tables and some umbrellas and a building behind it.
You do, but you only see it from that angle, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
This is a reconstruction of that set back at MGM Studios.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so
I didn't notice.
I have to assume as part of the cost saving, they did not shoot this at Port Marion. They just made this space look like the area at Port Marion as they...
they did a good job.
Yeah, very good. It's just so much has been made of filming on location at Port Marion before. I thought it was worthwhile to call out that. Totally. Yeah, apparently they do still use sets back in London.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I think this is Kenneth Bridgman, who's the set dresser. Really knocked it out of the park with us. And then there's this little exchange here. I don't think we need to do it in depth, but there is some cute lines like. This is interesting. I don't know the protocol for speaking to someone you've met in a dream.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's good.
I'm gonna use that. That's a good opening line.
All right, guys. You see number 14 sitting on a table alone. How do you approach?
Well, I've got 3 syringes.
She keeps on insisting that, he's making it up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. She's doing a classic gaslighting as a girl boss. We just need her to gatekeep for the trifecta.
She has a good line of, I'm usually a social butterfly, but not today.
Right. And he points out again, we get the same thing that we've gotten before of the village, swapping out people's numbers as they need. Right.
Last week, number 14 was an old woman in a wheelchair.
Right. He helped her with her rug, meaning her blanket that covered her legs. Right.
Right.
And yeah, it's this real sense of okay, the village staff, the wardens, regularly are going to remove quote unquote real villagers maybe to install some staff that they need there for some amount of time. I feel bad for whatever happened to number 14. Rest in peace.
Or maybe she went home.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe
totally.
she was staff. You don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was. Yeah. That was the classic. We'll get number 6 to help with this grandma's rug on her knees, and then he'll reveal everything to us. Ploy.
Now, what if the village is just a retirement community, and that's why everyone's so weird?
Maybe it's a good theory. I don't know if I've seen that one before.
Yeah.
There's a cut scene here directly after this, where number 14 reports to number 2. To say, hey, he's on to us. And number 2 just says, well, maybe you're the woman of his dreams, which I thought was fun.
That's a good line, but this section in particular is where I really started to feel appreciation for how brisk the episode is. Because after this, we get him back at home that evening.
Yep.
Getting knocked out by his tea.
Yep. His nightcap.
his we see a shot of the syringe, and then we are back in his dream without much fuss at all. We are trusted to be like, okay, they knocked him out, they gave him the drug, and we're trying again.
Yeah. I do agree. I think that's really good. Two things on this. One, the script actually called for his maid to be an Arabian woman, to only speak to him in Arabic.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. And it feels more like, again, trying to gesture at the multiculturalism that like there are people from all over the place here, right? More on her in a second. And then number two, haha. The second point here is that why does he take the nightcap? He's already suspicious.
I thought it was noteworthy. So first of all, we've never seen this maid before.
No, not at all.
And again, maybe this is later in the production order. Maybe such a character would be introduced and just isn't in the mix.
Sure.
But taking it as it lies.
Yep.
We've seen one maid previously who he hated.
Yes.
Who he yelled at, and it turned out was right in yelling at because she was there trying to get information out of him.
Right.
This like older lady who does not have a whole lot of lines is much more like, okay, sort of a lower class older woman who's doing some work for a man who has money, taking care of his things for him.
Yep.
Making some tea for him before he goes to sleep.
Yep.
Just says goodnight. He says goodnight, drinks the tea. Turns out the tea has been spiked and he passes out.
Yeah. She's not even credited.
She's not even credited. But the idea that he has a maid that he's not angry at was like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
and then he drinks the tea.
It's so weird.
It seems very out of character from the number 6 that we have come to know and love.
Yeah.
I understand that at a certain point you just sort of need him to do that for the episode to keep moving. But
right. Well, we'll get a funny return on this for the third night.
We will. I guess you could have probably had him like drinking the tea while focused on something else.
Sure.
In order to for him to realize too late what's going on, but so it goes.
So it goes. Not that important. Yep. Okay. Dream 2. B.
He's back in the dream.
He's back in the dream. What's up with this one?
Well, he's back at the start of the party.
Is it though?
So to speak.
Because Engadine immediately...
He's back at the party.
He's back at the party.
Yeah.
Engadine shows up, just as you've gestured at, she will, and immediately is like, well, where's my handsome friend? Right?
Right. And he makes reference to the fact that, like, he had clearly met A and had some dealings with him or something like that. So it could be that the party was simply continuing. Not a whole lot of time had passed and he has returned to the party.
I think that's what... I think that's the dream logic of the situation, right?
It certainly could be. I think you could also read it as like a time loop where the previous party is... This is a continuation of the party, but the party is also restarted. We don't really get a good sense of like how much time takes place at the party. Obviously, we only really see like 4 minutes worth of the previous one. I don't know how many hours we're supposed to imagine took place there.
Yeah.
But then again, he was also driven to a location across town or something like that. So it's hard to say how much time they want us to read into it. But as opposed to being like calm and relaxed and kind of carefree when he first arrived at the party, number 6 here is a little bit more distressed. Yeah. He's still playing wittily with Madame Anjani, but he still seems a little like he's not quite sure how he got here. Yes. Like something's out of place and he can't figure out what. He's sort of looking over his shoulder a little bit.
There's one thing I forgot to mention at the end of the fight scene to cap out the fight scene. He says, "Be seeing you."
He does say "be seeing you."
And in the script, he calls for him to look confused when he says that.
Right, because obviously if he'd never been to the village, he wouldn't think to use that expression, right?
So back again. I completely agree. I think that whatever kind of logic you want to project on the scene, it sort of works. Again, it's a dream, it's dream logic. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is that he remembers the events with A. That's important, even within the dream. And some time apparently has passed at the party.
Right. He gets a message.
He gets a message. Well, first of all, they try to do the same, like injecting B into the scene. There's a funny little quip that 14 has that, oh, she even looks like a spy. And number 2 refers to her as from a family of spies, of freelance spies, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So these are like maybe corporate spies or something, where like
maybe it's like a hunter-hunter situation.
I think it's probably a hunter-hunter situation. This is a gang freaks that we're looking at. She's similarly abandoned her son. Anyway. But they try to inject her into the dream, and it doesn't seem like it works at first.
Yeah.
And instead what we get is a maid dressed up in like a very stereotypical French maid outfit. Number 2 sort of makes allusions to like, oh, now who do we have here? Definitely not B. But she's brought a message. Here, there's a cute, again, little interaction between Engadine and Six, right? She pretends to be jealous that he's receiving a note. It's very cute.
Mm-hmm.
In the script, it calls for Engadine to tell the maid here, who's Lucette, to fix her lipstick, which suggests she's been doing something in the background.
Oh, sure.
Which again, time has passed, maybe. This is Bettine Lebeau, or Bettina Lebeau, went by both names. She was a Belgian television actress and model, and she was also a Holocaust survivor, which is wild.
Yeah, again, just thinking about like how old this show is.
Yeah. So he follows the note to go to the garden, where he separately meets B. What do you think about this whole scene?
This is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we have seen very particular kinds of interactions between Patrick McGowan's character and women.
Yep.
This might as well be a different show for and not so much in the way of like, oh, this is a completely different character. It's like,
no,
seeing him in a different environment, in a world of spies, in a world of high society, interacting in this way with people that he has known for many years. He's just behaving in a different mode, in a different register, right?
Totally. We get a very different reaction to B compared to A. Number 6 appears to be like genuinely really close friends with B.
Yeah, and like not in a suitor and object of affection kind of way.
Not
like,
at all.
Honestly, just peers who are who have mutual respect for one another and the work that they do.
Yeah. B gets a whole bunch of really great lines in here. When number 6 warns her that her old enemy, assumably A, is around, she says, well, being killed is an occupational hazard.
It's true.
It's great.
Yeah.
B is played by Annette Carroll. She's a German-born American actress. She mostly did genre fiction, so a lot of spy and police stuff. So she was in Avengers, No Hiding Place. She's really, really good in this.
She is incredible. Tragically, she died not only that same year, but before this episode even went to air.
Really a shame. What a loss.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
They're dancing. They are not talking shop. They are just having a good time together.
Well, after they talk shop a little bit.
They basically exchange like, you're on vacation. What are you going to do? And so on and so forth. But then they start dancing. They're drinking champagne.
Number 2 hates time.
Number 2 hates this.
Number 2 hates fun. He's the opposite of Leo McCurr number 2. If Leo McCurr number 2 was watching this, he would be like, oh, I love this.
Is this dancing? I love that.
I love this. Oh, I'm going to add this to his file. And so number 2, his desperation, which we've gestured at several times, right? Commands number 14 to do something. And number 14, again, the consummate scientist, sort of immediately on her feet theorizes she might be able to project live audio, not just like the video that they've been projecting into the dream.
Where she would actually be able to craft the dream in such a way that it is provoking a particular response from him.
Yeah. They get in, they control the world of the dream, and then they steal their secrets, just like in Inception from the movie Inception.
That's right.
So 14 starts puppeting B. She's basically feeding B lines. right?
Right, and they're coming out in B's voice.
Right, and she's, 14 is giving this sort of like very neutral performance, and B is then performing them to sort of better match the character and the situation, but it doesn't really match, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 6 is immediately suspicious.
Yeah, because her entire like mode of conversation has changed, where previously
her affect is completely different.
Yeah, his entire construction of her as like this old friend who is genuinely happy to see him is suddenly prying into his business and asking questions she wouldn't usually ask.
Right.
And she says that, well, she doesn't really want to have to ask after this stuff, but she's being threatened. And they want to get to him through her. And if he'll just please just tell me why you quit, then maybe they'll back off.
Yeah, this is just the same mage shtick from episode 1.
It's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah.
But we're not supposed to think it's good.
No.
Right? It's supposed to read as like they're getting desperate, right? And this is not really B.
No, but and Annette Carroll does a really good job of like playing hysterical in a way that is like both very, very different from the way that she was acting before, but is genuine to the way the character would behave. Like she's not suddenly like, she's not a robot that suddenly malfunctioned, right? she's a character who suddenly has a different valence of being, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly, number 6 starts asking like questions for her to prove who she really is, who she says she is.
First 2 thugs show up out of the bushes.
Okay, yes. First some goons spawn in.
Yeah. Terry York and Peter Braham just show up out of nowhere. He gets into some quick fist fight, and then somebody pulls a gun on B.
Yeah, a third goon shows up very calmly behind B.
Who does not move.
Yeah, whose entire purpose is to hold a gun to her head.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yes, this is when we get to the bit that you're referring to, where number 6 is doing the classic, like, prove you're not a shapeshifter. Tell me something only you would know sort of thing.
Right, and she can't do it.
No, well, she does it for a bit, because they do have the beautiful binders that number 2 paid Angelo to go buy him from Costco or wherever. So she gets a couple answers right, but there is this hesitation, which is suspicious. And then number 6 brings up a son. Mm-hmm. And number 2 is convinced, she doesn't have one.
There's not one in the file.
It's not in the file, so how could she have a son? But she clearly has a secret son, right?
It's true.
Because number 6 asks additional follow-up questions, right? Like, what's the name of your son? How old is he, etc., right? Like, and I think this is really interesting, because this is our first gesture at the village's information web being incomplete.
Yes.
B is real, right? She's a real person out there. Mm-hmm. She really has a secret son, right?
That number 6 knows about.
That number 6, because they are genuinely friends.
Right. Or at least they are now, right?
Right, sure.
Like, you can easily imagine, like, the series in which number 6 and she are working. She is the sometimes friend, sometimes enemy.
Oh, totally.
Of him, dropping in every now and then.
Yeah.
Who they eventually grow to respect one another, even if they're chasing opposite goals periodically. That kind of thing.
It's a real testament to Annette Carroll's performance here, and McGowan's as well, that it gestures at this entire history that we are not privy to, but that you can imagine. Yeah. So, okay, the second dream ends again. It's a dud, right?
Just a really good line. McGowan ends this with, he says, "You are not who you pretend to be."
Yeah. Before
he just stalks off into the garden, leaving her to her fate.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get day 2. Right?
3.
I guess you're right. I just wasn't thinking about, we never saw number 6 on day 3. So this is only our second day seeing number 6, but you're right. It is the third day, technically.
Dawn of the final day.
Dawn of the final day. Because on the very first day, 2 was like, we're doing it tonight.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, typical evil boss stuff. So this is the day that
I'm going to blow up the moon.
He is going to do that, though. I'm glad that he gets taken out at the end of the episode, presumably.
God, the village would be a great location for a time loop game.
It's true. Somebody make that.
Okay.
So this is the day that you already gestured at, but number 6 follows number 14 in what is honestly not great following behind someone work, but it's fine. And as she goes to the secret lab, right?
I don't know. I have a better opinion of it, I think, than that. In part because so much is being done with good camera work here. So again, as part of the cost saving, most of the footage here is not of McGowan.
Right. Oh, interesting.
There's intercuts of McGowan close-ups.
Sure.
But the figure that is following her is not McGowan, and a lot of it is done in first-person perspective.
Oh, true.
Where it's just the camera following her. There's a really, really good shot where there's a noise and she turns around and the camera ducks behind some foliage as if number 6 is crouching down.
Sure. I completely agree with that. Like, the camera work throughout has been really masterful this episode. What I meant more is, like, number 6's ability to follow people is mostly crouching down behind things based.
I mean, they hadn't invented anything before that.
I guess that's
fair. They hadn't invented cardboard boxes. They hadn't invented magazines that you throw in front of guard patrols.
It's true. It's true. No banana peels.
They
no
hadn't
noise
invented
makers.
the ability to punch a dog.
Thank God. I wish they'd never had. So he follows her into the secret lab in the woods, basically.
She goes in through a door that he cannot open. And what does he do?
He tries, though.
What does he do? He crawls into a goddamn air duct.
Classic spy stuff right here.
It's so good.
Real quick, before we get much further, do you think this lab was always in the woods?
Do you mean, was it always there, or do you mean, was it moved?
I mean, was it always here? So, like, we've seen prior episodes, earlier points of the prisoner timeline, right?
Oh, I see. So you mean he's been in the woods but hasn't found this lab before?
Exactly. And it's not like it's super well hidden. It's a big metal door and like a cliff face.
Yeah. I'm willing to bet the woods are bigger than we've seen so far.
Totally. They also, assumably, what's interesting here is, like, they don't have any eyes on him over here.
Yeah, that's true. There's no, or if they are surveilling him, they're not showing us that. So,
well, we specifically know they're not surveilling him. We'll get to that in a minute. But because, otherwise they'd know the jig was up.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that makes me think that actually this lab might be a much more recent thing in the fiction.
Yes. Okay.
Because they haven't installed all these security measures around it.
Right. It's kind of off the grid because it's so new.
Exactly. And we know that number 14 is new, right?
Right. This is a new experiment that's been moved up.
Exactly. And so I think because of that, I think this is the same sort of, like, rapid ability to do, like, architecture seed construction work that we've seen the last 2 episodes.
Right. No, finish what you're saying.
I was going to say, I think the village wardens are really good at just building things really fast.
Yeah, there's a degree of, like, oh God, not rapid prototyping is not the word that I'm looking for, but, like, almost like fail fast kind of mentality of, like, I don't know, let's just try 12 things and see if they work.
Yeah.
Real hustle culture.
Real. They're on their grind set. Let me tell you.
I mean, they are, but if you're a number 2 and your grind does not work, you get killed.
It's true. As far as we know. Anyway.
Yeah.
So he goes through the vent. It's spy style, right? Tell me about this sequence, Brendan.
So he clambers down this air duct. He spots number 14 walking past down a hallway. Waits for her to go past and sneaks through the grate into the hallway into the medical room where the gurney and all of the lab equipment has been set up.
Yep.
Quickly figures out what's been going on and how it all works.
Yep.
Finds the last remaining vial that has the mind control, or not mind control, but has the
dream control
drug remaining in it.
Yep.
Drains it.
A little bit. Not a ton, not all
drains
of it.
Most
a little
of it.
bit.
So we should say it's like sort of like a red purple kind of formula or something like that. So it looks really distinctive.
Yep.
Drains most of it out onto a tissue and then fills the rest up with water. So it looks like it did before, but is basically
mostly
filled with an inert substance.
Yeah. And we even see when she's about to inject it that night, number 14 does look at it for a second. Like, hold on.
Right.
This looks a little bit weird.
Yeah.
I before we get too much further, I want to talk about the music in this sequence. I don't know if you saw in the script, but this initial, as written in the script, this called for a much more death-defying, like, incursion into the lab.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. There was supposed to be a bit here where he was, like, holding on for dear life. We are supposed to, like, see his fingers whitening as he's, like, holding on the edge of some sort of, like, vent so that he doesn't drop down and is audible to number 14. Like, she's supposed to come back and he's, like, caught unaware.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so my reading, because it's like the intensity of the music is good. Like, the music itself sounds good, but doesn't super match what's happening. Right? Like he himself is very placid throughout all of this.
I guess so. We have not seen him successfully doing a whole lot of sequences like this before. And so
sure,
I think I'm more willing to chalk it up to not seeing a lot of this kind of sequence on the show just yet.
That's fair. But I could also easily imagine it being, we picked the music first before we shot the scene.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Especially if it's stock. And then it's like, well, we need something intense for, like, when he's doing the death-defying stuff. And then Patrick McGoohan was probably like, I'm not doing that.
Do you think that's what he was like?
Yeah, I think they all sound the same. I've been doing the same voice for every character so far.
That's
yeah. Okay. That's all that I rested that I wanted to say in this day sequence.
Can you do Patrick McGoohan doing Dracula?
Why, it's me, Dracula.
So no is the answer.
I mean, I can do Dracula, but I was doing the bit. Gosh,
can you do Dracula doing Patrick McGoohan?
Well, hello there. I am not a number, but a real man. How's that?
I'm putting that into. I'm retconning that into the trailer.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think we could just jump from this sort of investigation sequence directly to number 2.
Yes.
We get the reveal that number 2 sleeps under his office.
So is his bedroom down there? Is his chair an elevator from that level up to his control room?
It does seem like that. Like we see in the very first episode, right? About how like the chairs go up and down from some lower level.
They do.
And so you could easily imagine.
I just assumed it was more office, but he comes up in his dressing gown.
Well, Brennan, I don't know if you remember it, but we're going to learn a lot about what's underneath the village when we get to the end of the series.
Oh, the dragon.
Yeah, the dragon. And Dracula, of course.
He's so mad when he gets up there and he sees...
It's so good.
Yeah.
He's in his little bathrobe, his little sleeper, his pajamas.
He complains about how much number 6 walks.
I know. Always walking. And then, they've got him on camera. And number 6 turns to the camera because, of course, he knows where all the cameras are, and he says, "Be seeing you." And number 2 just goes, "No, I'll be seeing you."
Great comeback.
It's so good. You can't even hear him.
Very important detail from the script. The butler's indifferent to number 2's sleeplessness.
Yes. We also get a lost scene where he goes to bed beneath it because he didn't sleep well the night before. We also did skip by it, but there is a brief number 6, number 2 classic duel battle where number 6 gestures at the fact that like he knows what's up on the first day.
Oh yeah. This is really the only time that they speak to one another. This is after he sees number 14 at the cafe.
Yeah. But before we get back to that night, right?
That's right.
And he does this cute little bit where he like shows off his like needle mark, et cetera, et cetera. Number 2 espouses his love of milk once more.
It's true.
It's a classic number 6, number 2 back and forth. It's not a particularly strong one, but it's worth noting.
Take a moment and tell us how bad you got milk on the mind. 1, milk is bumping all up in my mind meat. 2, the milk is screaming my name, Haas. 3, they mailed my mind to milk and the brain boss accepted the charges. 4, MILK.
Wow. That's number 2. That's what number 2 is thinking at all times.
Just all 4 of them?
Yeah.
All right.
So this is the night where we get the return. If the first night of him taking the nightcap was the setup, this is the payoff to the joke, right?
Yep.
So
he gets
Mhm,
he gets the teacup.
Mhm.
It's been poured out for him.
Yep.
He's wearing this excellent bathrobe. I don't think we've said it's like tiger striped.
Uh-huh. And then he thinking he's very clever because he's still thirsty. He gets some water
Mhm.
from the tap. He's smiling to himself. He's so clever in this moment. And then what happens, Brendan?
He passes out.
Uh-huh. They
Or
drugged
does
his
he?
tap as well.
Is that what you took from this?
He stumbles to the bed. He
don't
doesn't
think
even
he's-
make it all the way.
Now, okay, I could see that reading.
Okay, what do you think happened?
I think he's pretending to pass out so that they think he drank the tea.
But they have eyes on him even at the sink.
But they haven't been watching him sneaking
Sure.
around.
I guess. I don't know. I think the fact that like it takes him a little bit even in the dream to like take full control makes me think that they really did get him here.
My thinking is this: if particularly this number two
Uh-huh.
had seen him pour out his tea and then was like, he thinks he's smart, does he? Add the solution to his tap water.
Uh-huh.
We would have seen that.
Maybe. I don't know.
I think this is him fooling him.
It's true. I mean, so regardless, part of the reason why this may not be communicated super well is that it was completely different in the script.
Yeah, there's a lot of adjustment between like the events of the script, as we've made mention to several times already.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, the forward action of it is still pretty much the same, but there's a lot of changes in the execution.
Yes.
I don't know how much of that is, again, McGowan clashing with the director or not.
Right. So the original bit here was going to be, again, the sort of Arabic-speaking maid telling him to, like, take his nightcap and him basically being, like, pressured into it by her.
Right.
And then because she only spoke Arabic previously, her at the end then speaking in English once he was knocked out. So, like, that was supposed to be the reveal here. And so my anticipation is who knows which of our readings or some third thing they actually intended in this sequence, just because they had to basically improvise it and they couldn't invent other, recorded bits to back up whatever the improvisation was.
Sure.
Anyway, either way, it gets us back into the lab for C. Hey, Brennan, who's C?
Well, they don't know.
What?
Yeah, number two is such a dummy. He's created an entire binder for someone who he doesn't even have a picture of.
Yeah. It's a completely empty binder.
No, by this point, number 14 is about done with him.
Yes, it's true.
She's done a really good job of communicating, like, she's doing a job. She's not necessarily here for the whole village thing or whatever.
Right.
But she's got a job to do. She's concerned about her subject.
Right.
And does not think a whole lot about how number two is conducting himself in this moment.
She's definitely threatened by him initially. In the first couple nights.
She's concerned for her own life and limb, but like is not a willing accomplice necessarily.
Oh, not even a little bit. But
yeah.
I think earlier she is like cowed by him in a way that by night 3, she's just fed up with him.
Sure. And number two is insistent that it's process of elimination. If it's not A or B, it must be C.
Obviously.
So what happens?
Well, we get into the party, and it is much more sort of hallucinatory than it was previously.
That's right. It's sort of like it's like when you're playing a video game and you've had too much to drink and the camera goes wild.
Yeah. There's also like classic 1960s, 70s like party music happening, whereas previously that was not the case.
Yeah, it's much more rock and roll than it was before.
It's true. There's a lot of people just like laughing uproariously in the background who we never see.
Number 6 says, "This is a dreamy party, man."
That's not even the way he said it, though. This is a dreamy party.
Yeah, number 6 would never say man.
No, he wouldn't. He also like is clearly struggling, right? It's very similar to when he woke up from the dream, the drug the first day or the first second.
Yeah, there's a real sense of disorientation that wasn't here before.
Yes, and he spots a sort of a mirror that's out of place. We get sort of cutbacks of number 14, who's concerned. She says, "Hey, no, I was right. The drug is too much. We got to stop this." Number 2, of course, says we can't. And he straightens the mirror. And by straightening the mirror, he like straightens out the dream.
Really good, like dream logic, video game solution to the problem.
Yeah. It's really fun.
Yeah.
We get our third and final Ongadine intro, or actually no, that was a little bit earlier. There's a lot of like yelling and happiness during that, so she's already disappeared. And what we get instead is like this interesting little like almost like Zelda fetch quest thing, right?
Yes, I think she introduces him to some lady.
Yes.
And says basically like, take care of him for a moment. I have to talk to another guest.
Well, she specifically says he's the last sane man in the world. Which is interesting.
Yeah, blonde lady says, I love sane men.
It's true. Well, it looks like she loves men who have money, and she's angling.
Might be the case, yes.
Do you recognize this actress, Brendan?
No, I don't think that I do.
This is Georgina Cookson.
Okay.
So she's this blonde lady. She's never named in this episode. She will come back later in the series as Mrs. Butterworth from Many Happy Returns. Do you remember that character?
Huh.
I don't want to reveal for anybody who's like watching it for the first time.
No, I don't. I remember a lot, but not necessarily like when those things happen. So no, I don't think that I do.
Okay. It is ridiculous that they use her here.
Interesting. Okay.
Especially if this was meant to occur later in the series than it does.
Right.
We'll get to it. I'll call it out again when we get to Many Happy Returns. It is wild that they do this, and I want to talk about it.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, I want to talk about what that means about number 6's subconscious. But anyway.
Okay, good. Yeah, she wants him to play a quick game of roulette.
What number does she suggests that he use?
She gives him one of her earrings and suggests number 6.
I'm sure it's your lucky number.
He seems a little confused by this, but he plays the game anyway.
Uh-huh.
Puts it down on number 6.
Uh-huh.
And he wins.
He wins, and he gets a key for his trouble. The guy running the roulette takes the earring pour le service for the service.
Uh-huh.
And he sort of wanders around with the key for a little bit until we see close up someone else with a second exact duplicate key. Who is it?
It's Madame Angeline.
Ongadine herself. Number
Ongadine.
2.
It's Madame it's Gunga Din herself.
It's Jar Jar Binks herself. Misa. Misa's so happy to see you, number 6.
No. No, my subconscious.
Number 2 goes, no. It's a great line read.
So, yes.
Because
this, the fact that she is C.
Yes.
Seems to, like, for a moment, it seems as if this information might be worth as much as why number 6 resigned.
Yes, he is so excited.
He immediately starts making plans to have her brought to the village.
Yeah. Which, this would be our second actual confirmed, actually a prisoner. Not just a member of staff pretending or something like that.
Right.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, and it further demonstrates this idea that whatever the village is, however pervasive its controllers are, however many governments they have their
hooks into.
They are not they are not all controlling and omniscient, right? They are not in control of everything.
Yeah.
There are things out there, there are people out there who they do not have and who they do not know things about.
Right.
And who they want, who they are desperate to get their hands on.
Right. We saw that a little bit with like Bee's secret son. We're seeing that here. Number 2 even says, she fooled us for years, which is so good, right? Like,
yeah.
They're hyping up Madame Ongadine so much. I would love the version of this where she does end up in the village, at least for an episode, and like we get her and number 6 in the village together. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But anyway, that doesn't happen. Why doesn't that happen?
So, well, for one thing, it's a dream.
What?
Yeah. They have these 2 keys.
Yes.
And she seems to make reference to the information that he has.
Yes. He shows it to her.
He has an envelope in his breast pocket.
Yep.
And she says, you can go back to the party. You can go back to your life.
Yes. They're standing in front of a door.
Yeah. they're make their way through the party until they're by themselves outside near a door.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, once you go through this door, there's no going back.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like, at this point, it's very unclear how much is construction,
Right.
how much is suggestion, and how much is him in control.
Right. But regardless, right, this version of Engadine really cares about Six. Like, genuinely cares about him. And we see that here. And it's really great because we get to see the range here. Because this character previously was all flirty, all fun, all jokes, right?
Right.
And in this moment, we see, no. Here's this genuine person underneath all of that. It's a really fantastic performance.
A person who is not merely, like, caring and considerate, but who also, like, understands the ramifications of spy work, who knows the game and how it's played and what the stakes are.
Yep. So they go through the door, and then that's probably the end of the episode, right?
Yeah. Number 6 dies, and the rest of it is just number 2 drinking milk.
Drinking copious amounts of milk until number 1's man comes to kill him.
Can you imagine, like, number 1 calls and number 2 is like, hey, boss, I killed number 6 like you asked.
Number 6 briefly dies. Or maybe doesn't fully die, but there's, like, some kind of medical issue here.
He has some kind of an attack because they've been giving him dream juice 3 nights in a row.
But you're not supposed to.
And they did that to dogs, and it was bad then, and it's bad now.
It is. But number 2 convinces number 14 to inject him with, like, adrenaline, basically, which you'd think would wake him up. It doesn't. It just restarts the dream.
Yeah.
At this point,
Patrick, that's just how Patrick Magoon is put together.
Wow, he's just built different.
Yeah.
Do you recognize? Do you recognize where Engadine drives him to?
There's footage in the background of Champs-Élysées.
Yes, that's true.
But she just drives him exactly to that same lot that A took him to.
Yeah. Do you recognize the lot? We've seen it before.
The lot is in front of what we know to be the community center.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
This time, he goes up the steps and he opens the door and he's in Yharnam from Bloodborne.
It's just a city street at night. It's not quite, there's nobody yelling, the blood, or anything like that.
There isn't, but the idea of, like, opening church doors and they just lead to another street is, again, very game logic, right?
It's very game logic. It's really good. It's the dream logic in this episode is some top tier dream logic.
Yeah. Engadine does not come with him. So he's completely alone to meet some mysterious figure.
Well, we haven't gestured at it, but Engadine has said, even I work for someone, which number 2 was already excited. And he's practically, like, jumping up and down with joy.
He's doing cartwheels. He's crying.
He's like, I thought I was going to die. This is so good. I'm going to get a promotion, probably.
He's pouring milk for everyone.
Shots. We're all doing shots.
The room's filling up with milk.
Yeah, so there's this quiet city street where we just get a voice, right, of number 6 talking to this mysterious someone who number 2 immediately calls D because it's the 4th person, obviously.
Of course.
And
actually, I think actually number 14 sardonically refers
we'll call
this
him
person
D.
as
That's
D.
true. That's true. Yes, because at this point she's fully tired. She's fully done.
Well, you can't find me.
Yes, there is a bit of this.
I want your secrets.
And number 6, basically keeps on calling it the scaredy cat for not showing himself.
You're the scaredy cat, not me.
I didn't realize that Amelie from Amelie was here.
I'm Amelie. I'm in charge of the village.
Oh my god, it's number 1, Amelie, the whole time. Oh, she cook an egg with a spoon and she controls the village. Finally, he shows himself. He's a very, like, dressed like a Phantom of the Opera figure.
It is. It's Phantom of the Opera. He's got a big face mask.
Uh-huh.
He's got a hat. He's got gloves. You can't see anything about this guy. He's wearing a cape.
A red cape.
It's so good.
And then, of course, he reveals number 6, pulls him apart. He there's a great little exchange, pulls him apart, he kills him.
He pulls his arms off. These come right off.
He's a gorilla. No. There's this great exchange here where number 6 moves to like unmask him, and number 6 is talking about how like we have to show them, right?
Right, because he's still in a dream, and yet he's talking as if he has an audience.
Right, yeah, because at this point he's fully in control. It was unclear when it happened, but he is fully in control.
Yeah, and it's doubly good because, of course, he has 2 audiences.
Yes, us and number 2 and 14.
Right.
We're just, we're 2 people. They're 2 people. Makes you think.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm a scientist. You drink milk.
I love milk.
We can't do
I'd like
this.
to kill you.
We can't do this. So he unmasks him, revealing to number 2 and 14 that it is number 2 that 6 has casted in his dream as this character.
That there is no individual like this.
Right.
It is completely a simulation created by him.
Right.
In order to get one over on number 2.
Right. And with that,
number 2 hates this.
Of course he hates this. This is dashing all his hopes, right? He's pouring all the milk down the drain. And with that, number 6 walks back out through the doors. But this time, it leads to the opening shot, like the helicopter shot we get of the village.
Yep.
We follow number 6 back up those steps in the forest into the lab. There's this incredible shot where the doors of the lab in the dream open and number 2 and 14 look at the real doors as if they're going to open too.
It's very good.
It's this incredible bit of like, he's so in control, not only of the dream, but of reality, that they believe it, right?
Yeah.
He goes up to number 2, dream number 2. And what's he do?
Yeah. In the dream, that is on screen as far as they are concerned.
Right.
Walks into the room up to the 2 of them, number 2 and number 14.
Yes.
Pulls out the envelope that he was going to give D.
Mm-hmm.
I think he says, I owe you something.
Yes.
And hands it over.
Uh-huh.
And number 2, watching himself, begs him, open it.
It's so funny. It's so funny. He's just like the guy in the horror movie yelling at the screen, don't go in there.
Yeah.
But he's so bought in. But like, think about it for a second, buddy. You already know he's playing with you.
And yet. His dream self opens the envelope, and inside is simply travel brochures.
Yes.
To all the destinations that number 6 was theoretically going to go to on his holiday.
Yes. And number 6 in the dream says, I wasn't going to sell out.
That's not why I resigned.
Yep.
And then he smiles, and in a final bit of turnabout, lies down on the gurney in the dream.
Yep.
And then starts dreaming once again about his resignation.
It's so good.
The last thing we see, number 2's megaphone,
big red phone,
starts ringing once again.
Mm-hmm. It's really easy to write a character that you want to be like cool and competent, and for them to come across as like not those things at all, right? But like number 6 in this moment is every bit like the hero, right? He's an Uberman, basically. He can do anything.
He's not only in total control of the situation, he's doing it while he's asleep. He's drugged and unconscious in front of them.
Yes. He's the most vulnerable he could be, and yet.
Yeah.
It's really good.
This is the first episode where he wins.
I know! We got a win in!
Yeah. Like, he manages not to lose in the previous episode, right?
Sure.
But we still see him exhausted, dejected, tired, retired, going back to his apartment to go to sleep.
Right.
After the experience with Nadia. In this one, number 2 is cooked. He's done.
He is completely done.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting as the 3rd episode, right? Because it establishes that number 6 can win. But this is what winning looks like. It's not you get to leave the village. It's you get a little bit more control of the situation and you maybe take out a number 2.
Right.
It's very video game logic-y, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're still trapped in the thing. You just beat the mini boss.
yeah, exactly. Great episode.
It's a great episode. We got here to the end, and I wanted to reflect back on a thing we set up we would do earlier, which is, how does number 6 think of himself?
Right.
Because he doesn't have any of the characters use his own name, right? Prior to him having conscious control, you could easily imagine that some of these characters in the real world in the past used his name when talking to him. None of them do.
You could also imagine that because of the category of people that he's interacting with, these are all people who are only ever known by code names or aliases, right?
That's fair.
Like if they are all spies,
that's fair.
With the exception of Madame Engadine, who it turns out is more spy than anyone else because she's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
That the names that he knows A and B by are all disposable anyway, and so likewise, maybe any names that they would have for him are
maybe.
But
I think two things complicate that reading.
Sure.
One is that he asks B about her son's name.
Right.
Like, names are important here. Names have weight in this episode, even.
It's a shibboleth as far as he's concerned, right? Yep. It's the key to deciding whether or not she is who she says she is.
Right. And two, even before we see him having control of the dream, he's still doing villagey things in it and like making references to himself about the village.
Right. It's bleeding in before he realizes that he's being manipulated.
Yep. And again, we can't fully talk about it yet, but like Blonde Lady says, I'm sure 6 is your lucky number, right? And it's unclear at that point whether he has full control of the dream or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's the be seeing you, like the doors are being opened for him, not automatically by people, but they're still swinging open like village doors, right? Like there's this real sense of his identity has become inextricable from the village, even when he imagines a version of himself not in the village anymore.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think
it's really cool and also a little bit horrifying.
It's really sad, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a triumphant episode for sure. Like he wins. Number 2 is a great sort of clown of a villain, right? And he gets taken out as just desserts. But the ending here is tragic because even in winning, like this is what winning has been reduced to for number 6. He doesn't get to leave. He's still, his identity is still part of being in the village.
Well, maybe future victories will give him a little bit more to glom onto.
Yeah, maybe he can expand his imagination a bit more about what is possible for himself, even as for now it has been sort of limited in this way.
What do you think about this morsel that we get, that whatever his resignation was, it was not about selling out?
It's in keeping with the little trail, if you like, that we've gotten across these other episodes, right?
Right.
Last time we had a gesturing at the fact that he had been considering something related to resignation, not necessarily resigning, but something for a long time, right?
Right.
In this episode, we get this clear statement: I didn't do it, to sell out, right? And I also don't think that, I don't think he even needed to tell us that. I think it's out of his character that he would sell out.
Yeah, I think, as you described earlier, anyone that's been paying attention to number 6 at all would see that that's not a valid reading for him.
Yeah.
I think I like having it text.
Sure.
Like, I believe him when he says this. I don't think he's just saying it for their benefit in any way.
Right.
So I don't think it's a lot, but I do like that it is like, okay, we can officially take that off the list.
And for what it's worth, the village warden seemed to take that at face value. They will not take this kind of tact of assuming he was going to sell out to someone again.
Yeah. And, talking once again about episode order, I do like getting that pretty definitively out of the way pretty early in the season.
It's true. Yeah. And if you're thinking about like the Avengers and other spy shows, right? If you're deep in spy fiction, it would be a normal thing to consider. And they want to tell you early, no, that's not it.
Yeah. I wonder if that's part of why it was moved up so soon.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd never fully know, right? Even if like somebody said in one of these 20, 40 years on things, right? Yeah. Who knows how true that is? But it is interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's just as likely. It is just as likely that it was moved up because it's a great episode.
It is such a good episode. It's also a breath of fresh air if you like care at all about women, because suddenly we have all of these phenomenal women characters on screen.
Yeah. And again, all of them doing a great job. All of them well rendered, well realized.
They're all full people, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of them are like, even 14, who's like on the village's side, sort of. Like, she has her own motivations here. Like, she's just a science lady.
Yeah, number 6 doesn't like talk down to or disrespect any of them.
No, it's really good.
Right. It's also an episode that basically doesn't take place in the village.
It's true. Another one of these.
Yeah. It's like, well, I mean, there's a little bit of that at the end of last episode, certainly.
Yes.
But I think we're going to see more of this as the show goes on. Yeah. For a show that all takes place in one place, they do a very, very good job, I think, of breaking that formula in really interesting ways.
Yeah, you could definitely imagine one of the reasons to bring it up would be to say something like, we've just asked people to watch 2 full episodes of one location. Let's see if we can't get another location on here.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other things that we didn't hit about this episode?
I'm looking. Brought up Bloodborne.
Yeah, thank God.
I think that's it. I think it's time. Number 1 with a bullet. Standout performance, line, moment. What is your favorite thing from this episode?
I'm gonna break my pattern. It's not just gonna be a third act bit actor who steals a scene. I gotta give it to Catherine Kath, though. Madame Engadine. I think that the whole episode would fall apart if she was not there.
I agree completely. I think she does such a good job of establishing herself early, weaving through the narrative, and then, as we see, being so essential to that ending.
Yeah.
Is terrific. It was just terrific.
Yeah. How about you?
So Sheila Allen, who plays number 14, does a lot of great stuff here.
True.
There is one scene in particular that I want to call out that I think is my number 1. And that is when he's talking with B. He's talking with B. Number 2 is like, this isn't working. We need them to talk about why he resigned.
Right.
Do something. And she is puzzling out how to feed in information using her voice in order to manipulate the dream. The little bit of fidgeting that she does with the equipment available, where she is thinking to herself and trying to riddle out how she can do this, is so convincing. It would be really, really easy to have these props in front of you and not have any idea what to do with them.
Sure.
But she is really, really good at acting like someone who is a professional, who has an idea, who is willing to tweak the experiment in particular ways.
Yep.
And who is willing to try things and then get excited about them when they work.
Yeah.
I think she does a really, really good job of playing a scientist, which is a hard thing to do, particularly when you're using props that don't really work.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
My favorite number 14 moment of the episode is when the 2 random thugs bring number 6 in on a gurney. It's raining because it's like Frankenstein's mad science stuff. And she goes, I don't want all that wet in here.
Yeah.
It's great.
Forces them to take their raincoats and Wellingtons off in the hallway.
It's so good.
It's good.
Do you imagine that they had to, in the rain, go up that like forest hill with the gurney?
Boy, I bet there's a more sensible path.
I hope so.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I would love to see again the like physical comedy cut of the episode where
like even the most sensible paths in Port Merion are like weird cobblestone curved stairways. So it's like, I don't know. I really wouldn't want to have a heart attack in this town.
Yeah, and it's raining as well, so you figure at one point, like, one of them drops the gurney, number 6, like, goes down several steps. They're like, oh, God, did he wake up? Oh, thank goodness.
Knock him out.
They just hit him with a bat outside. That's why his head was hurting the next day. It wasn't the drug. Oh, God.
Criminy.
All right. I think the last thing we have to do is to rate the episode.
Let's rate this episode.
Would you like to take the first pass, or shall I?
This is a great episode.
It is a great episode.
I'm going to rate it 3 out of 3 mysterious syringes.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I think it's a good episode. I don't think it's a perfect episode.
Sure.
This might be the fact that I have watched more Danger Man than you have.
Well, maybe we'll do something about that in the near future.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to rate it 5 out of 6 years ago that I defected.
Oh, yeah, I saw that in the news.
Yeah. It was big news at the time. I'm surprised
it was huge.
I'm surprised you don't remember his name. That we will never say.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Listen.
I'm listening.
No, not you.
Oh, sorry. I'm stopped.
I have two audiences.
Oh.
I have you.
Yes.
But then I have you, the listener.
Now, who do you mean? I'm wearing a black weird mask thing.
Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we really like making this show. We appreciate you listening. If you're interested, why not share the episode with a friend? Tell your pals how great The Prisoner's Dilemma is. We don't pay for advertising, so the only way we spread the show is through word of mouth. So we'd appreciate it if you like this show, share it with one other person.
Definitely.
If you don't know any other people, or if you're trapped in some sort of strange North Wales village, give us a rating. Go onto your podcast device and give us 5 out of 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it.
We would.
Believe it or not, it helps discoverability. That's what I'm told, as the person that makes podcasts.
Brendan, what are we watching next time?
Next time, we are continuing our watch of The Prisoner in UK original broadcast order. And we are watching Free for All. It's a good episide.
I mean, they're all good episodes. But I even mentioned, well, you're right, there's some messes. But I even mentioned from the beginning, right? I think that like this first run is really strong. Whether they even specifically move things around to make it stronger, who could say?
Who could say? Certainly not me.
Certainly not.
Our music was made by Devin Nelson. Find it at devindecibel.bandcamp.com. Our art was made by Cy Sweetman. Find his work at cyfsweetman.card.co. I think I got that right.
I think so.
I'm going to look it up. Cy F. Sweetman. Card.co. I got it right.
Nice.
Matthew, where can people find you? Do you have anything to plug? You got anything you're working on?
I'm always working on too many things, Brendan. I mean, the only thing that might be of interest to our listeners is they can listen to us on a different podcast called Oathsworn, which is a Band of Blade's actual play podcast.
That's true.
And I just recently ported, as of recording, a whole bunch of visual references from the show from co-host, rest in peace co-host, to Tumblr, which you can find at Oathsworn Visual Companion on Tumblr. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matthew Guz. And I don't know, if you're into weird academic games and creativity and AI research, you can follow me on other platforms as well. How about Brendan?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for moving all those visual references over to Tumblr.
Oh, thanks.
It's a source of joy each and every week. You can find me at my new blog. Brendan
I haven't
McLeod.
heard of this.
I have a new blog.
What?
BrendanMcLeod.dev.
I gotta get your RSS feed set up. That's a to-do for me.
Well, wait until the podcast is over. Yep.
All right. I guess
Finish.
I'll wait.
Be seeing you.
Not if I see you first.